This is not just another ghost story. What I'm about to tell you really happened to me. It started in a hotel room in Los Angeles. In the very same building where a young woman mysteriously died. Her body found in the water tank. On the roof. The police ruled it an accident, but what I experienced inside that room tells a very different story. I had always been fascinated by unsolved mysteries. The disappearance of Elisa Lam was one of those stories that stuck with me. In 2013, she vanished while staying at Los Angeles' Cecil Hotel. Weeks later, her body was found in the hotel's rooftop water tank. The last footage of her alive came from the hotel's elevator security camera. In the video, she presses multiple buttons, peeks out into the hallway as if hiding from someone, makes strange hand movements, and then disappears. Nobody knows exactly what happened to her. Some say it was a psychotic episode. Others believe something or someone was after her. I never thought I'd have a reason to visit the Cecil Hotel myself. But last year, on a work trip to Los Angeles, curiosity got the better of me. The building had been partially renovated and rebranded, but a few upper floors were still used as a budget hostel. I booked a single night in one of those rooms. From the outside, the hotel looked almost normal. The lobby had been redone with modern furniture, a coffee bar, and bright lights. But the staff barely smiled when I gave my name. The clerk glanced at the computer, then at me, and hesitated. "You know about the history of this place, right?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I replied. "That's why I'm here." She didn't say anything else. I just slid my room key across the counter and told me the elevator was to my left. The ride up felt slow, the metal box groaning with each floor. I noticed the floor buttons had been replaced, but something about them felt wrong. Maybe it was just the thought of Elisa pressing them before she vanished. My room was on the 14th floor, the same floor where Elisa had stayed. The hallway was narrow, carpet worn thin, air stale. My door was at the far end. The keycard beeped, the handle clicked, and I stepped inside. It was small, just a bed, a desk, and a window overlooking downtown LA. But the moment I walked in, a strange heaviness settled in my chest. I tried to shake it off. It was just the power of suggestion, right? I spent the day wandering around Los Angeles, but as the sun went down, I felt a growing unease about returning to that room. By the time I got back, the hallway was eerily quiet. Around midnight, I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, reading more about Elisa Lam. I rewatched the elevator video. The way she stepped in and out, glancing down the hallway, moving her hands in strange patterns, it was unsettling. At 2:47 a.m., I heard the elevator doors open. They stayed open. I sat up, in bed, listening. No footsteps, no voices, just the faint mechanical hum of the elevator holding its position. I told myself it was nothing. But then I remembered my room was directly across from the elevator. I slowly got out of bed and crept to the door, pressing my ear against it. Silenced I, and locked the door just enough to peek through the crack. The elevator stood there, doors wide open, empty. The hallway lights flickered. And then, I saw movement. A shadow slid across the far wall, not the shape of a person walking past, but something taller, thin. It moved unnaturally, gliding more than stepping. I shut the door quickly and locked it. My hands were shaking. For the next few minutes, nothing happened. I started to think maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then, faintly, I heard footsteps outside my door. They didn't sound like normal footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, and wet, as if someone was walking barefoot on a soaked floor. They stopped right in front of my room. I held my breath. Then, something brushed against the door. Not a knock, more like a hand, dragging slowly from the top to the bottom. I froze. Every instinct told me not to make a sound. After what felt like an eternity, the sound moved away, heading toward the elevator. The doors closed with a faint ding. I wanted to leave right then, but fear kept me rooted in place. At 3:11 a.m., the sound of rushing water came from above me, the roof. I knew the water tanks were up there. My heart pounded in my ears. Against every bit of common sense, I decided to go check. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my phone, and stepped into the hallway. The air felt colder than before, almost damp. I pressed the elevator button, but it didn't light up. So I took the stairs. Each step creaked under my weight. The stairwell smelled faintly of rust and mildew. When I reached the top floor, a locked door blocked my way. It had a faded sign, "Roof access authorized personnel only." I was about to turn back when I noticed the padlock hanging loosely and latched. Someone had already been up there. I pushed the door open. Cold night air hit my face. The rooftop was dark except for the glow of the city beyond. The massive water tanks loomed ahead, silent and still. Or almost still. One of the lids was slightly open. And there, near the tank, stood a figure. It was a woman. Her clothes were soaked, clinging to her body. Her long hair hung in wet strands, hiding her face. She turned slowly toward me. Her eyes were wide and blinking. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, suddenly, she smiled a wide and natural grin. I stumbled back toward the stairwell, but she took a step closer. Water dripped from her fingertips, leaving dark spots on the concrete. I turned and ran, slamming the door shut behind me. My breathing was ragged, my hands trembling. When I finally made it back to my room, I locked every possible lock and sat against the wall, listening. From far away, maybe from the roof, maybe from the hallway, I heard a woman's voice whisper, "Help me." I sat there on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. The whisper I had heard, it hadn't been a hallucination. It was too clear, too close. I stared at the door, half expecting to see the handle turn. Minutes passed. My phone lay on the bed, but I couldn't bring myself to reach for it. My hands were trembling too much. Finally, I forced myself up and checked the hallway through the peephole. Empty, still. Something didn't feel right. I thought about leaving the hotel right then, but when I glanced at the clock, it was 3:27 a.m. The idea of walking alone through downtown Los Angeles in the middle of the night didn't feel much safer. Instead, I turned on the desk lamp, sat at the small table, and began typing notes into my phone about everything that had happened. Part of me thought, if something happens to me, at least someone will know what I saw. The quiet was almost worse than the noises earlier. My ears strained for any sign of movement. Then, the lamp flickered. It was just a quick pulse of light. Off, then back on, but it made my stomach knot. I checked the bulb. Nothing unusual. I sat back down, trying to convince myself it was just the old wiring. That's when the faucet in the bathroom turned on. The sound of rushing water filled the room. I froze. I knew I hadn't used the sink since brushing my teeth hours earlier. Slowly, I stood up and edged toward the bathroom door. The light inside was off, but water splashed against porcelain. I reached in, flipped the switch. The sink was running full blast. And in the basin, swirling in the drain, was something dark, like strands of long black hair. I shut off the water, my hands shaking violently. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, terrified. But then, something moved in the mirror. Not me. In the space just behind me, a shadow stretched unnaturally tall, its head tilting at an impossible angle. I spun around, nothing there. My heart was hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. I backed out of the bathroom and slammed the door shut. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the bed, staring at the door until the first hint of daylight crept into the room. By 7 o'clock a.m., I had made up my mind. I was checking out. I grabbed my bag and headed to the elevator. The lobby was quiet, the morning staff barely glancing up. I told the clerk I was leaving early. She looked up, her eyes searching mine for a moment. Then she said quietly, "Did you hear her?" I froze. What, her? The girl who never left? I didn't answer. I didn't want to. She just nodded slowly, as if she already knew. I stepped outside into the bright California sun, the weight lifting slightly from my chest. I told myself it was over. But at WASN single quotes two nights later, back in my apartment across the country, I woke to the sound of water running. Half asleep, I stumbled toward my bathroom. The light was off, but I could hear the steady splash of the faucet. I flicked the switch. The sink was running full blast. In the basin, long, wet strands of black hair. I turned off the water, my mind racing. My heart thudded in my chest as I glanced into the mirror. Behind me, a figure stood in the corner of the room. Soaked clothing clung to her, dripping onto the floor. Her head was lowered, hair obscuring her face. I froze. Then, slowly, her head tilted upward, and I saw her eyes wide, glassy, and blinking. Her lips moved soundlessly. I stumbled back, my hand slamming the light switch off. Darkness swallowed the room. When I turned it back on, she was gone. The only sign she'd been there was a wet footprint on the tile floor, bare, small. I didn't sleep again that night. And in the weeks that followed, small things kept happening. My shower would turn on by itself. I'd find puddles of water on the floor. My phone would ring from a no-caller ID number. And when I answered, there would be silence. And then a faint sound of water splashing. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I'd imagine everything. But deep down, I knew. Something had followed me home from that hotel. And one night, weeks later, I woke again to the sound of water. But this time, it wasn't coming from the bathroom. It was coming from under my bed. I froze, barely breathing. Slowly, I leaned over the edge and peered into the darkness beneath. Two wide and blinking eyes stared back at me. A pale hand reached out, dripping water onto the floor. And then, in a voice no louder than a whisper, she said, "Help me, or join me." I moved out the next day. But no matter where I go, sometimes I still hear it. The faint, steady sound of water, and a soft voice whispering my name.